I hope you had the opportunity to watch the video in advance. I appreciate it's a lot, and I wasn't sure how it would play for people who have different levels of experience. So please ask questions, complain early and often as I'm going through stuff today. So what I'd like to do is work through the development of a new project so I can have a chance to reinforce some of the things that I showed in the videos. I will introduce a couple of new things, but what I really liked about the project when the project from the video, when Adam introduced it, is there's so many topics that are covered. So for today, I'll walk you through a slightly less realistic project, which is on the use of nachos as adjuvant treatment for generalized anxiety disorder. So GAD is a real disorder. Nachos are not a real therapy, but I thought it would work. So my plan is I want to show you an additional trick for learning about REDCap, and then we'll walk through the process of setting up a project. Questions, comments, or complaints to start out with? Okay. So I'm assuming that all of you have done a little bit with REDCap, at least logged in. What I'd like to point out to you is when you first log into REDCap, you can say, give me a new project. And there's different options down here. So you can give your new project a name, call it blah, and then set it up for practice or just for fun. If you choose practice or just for fun, the admins the REDCap administrators here at UM can quickly get your project approved. So specify it's just for practice. And again, don't use this for anything real. What I want to point out to you is the templates that are down here. So in the video, I mentioned that there's the CTSI e-consent template, but I didn't mention the other ones that are here. And so these are set up, I think all of these, or all but one or two of these, were set up by Vanderbilt, by the REDCap team to help with training. So I suggest go ahead and grab, in your spare time, deploy, so choose a name, set it for practice or fun, and then deploy these so that you can look and see how the projects were built. So for example, there's this one here, which is a piping example project. And I actually built that one out, or I requested it the other day. So you can click on it and see it just like any other project. What is this thing? If you click the online designer, it shows you that there is a sample survey. What's in this sample survey? Well, go up, just do it. You can go up here to the survey distribution tools. You click survey distribution tools, you can do the survey. So you see it starts out, you can provide a name. I may have done this before. And when I fill in my name, you'll notice that it fills in the blank down here. So in the sample I walked you through, or I showed you an example of piping, this has additional examples of piping and how you can do it. So again, I don't think there's anything new in this project, but it does give you a chance to see how other things are deployed. So click this out. I'm going to go with strawberry, be a rebel, and do the next page. So you'll notice here that it grabbed my response from earlier and is showing it. Somebody tell me that you're still seeing my browser?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Zoom. The green line went away, the dotted line around the edge. So it grabs the value from the previous screen and pipes it onto here. And you can see you can add in details. Obviously, the best number is 42. It does the multiplication. It can grab the value, which I entered here, and use it in a formula. And then here I am Raymond Balise. And it will take the data and pipe it onto the new form. So I hope you're saying to yourself, well, that's kind of interesting. I can see how to use that. And also thinking to yourself, well, how does that actually work? So I can submit this and I'll save the response. If I go back to the sample project, I can go to the online designer. So up here, hit the online designer and then look at how this is actually deployed and developed. So here's the fields that you saw on the screen for entering your name. And if, as you hopefully will recall from the tutorial video, you can specify the content of another variable using a pipe. And the pipe is created by using a variable name in square brackets. So up here, actually make this hopefully a little easier for you to see. So up here, I entered my first name into a variable called first underscore name. To have it appear as part of the label for a later variable, I just put the variable name inside of square brackets, and it will automatically take care of displaying it for me. I did mention in the recording that if you're pulling data from a longitudinal project, you want to specify the event before the name of the variable. You don't have to do that technically if the variable is from the same visit. So if you have a longitudinal project where you have several instruments where you're gathering data, technically you don't have to call out which visit it's from and it will use the current visit. Personally, I still do it just so I still specify which visit just so it's clearer. And questions, comments, complaints about that? So hopefully, looking at the sample projects, you'll get some more examples and you can use them to learn. So that's general point number one. Actually make this a tiny bit smaller. There we go. All right. So the next thing I want to do is walk you through the development of a new project. And so again, the silly example is what happens if I'm using nachos as adjuvant treatment for someone who's suffering from generalized anxiety disorder. The pretend clinical trial is going to be a pre-post design. So I'm going to intake some patients, assess their anxiety using a standardized instrument, something called the GAD or GAD-7. And I'm also going to assess their feelings towards nachos using an insane instrument I meant and created several years ago called the Nacho Craving Index. So the idea is at baseline, we're going to assess people's nacho cravings with the NCI. For the cancer people in the room, it really is called NCI because of that. So we're going to do the NCI and the GAD, and then we're going to have a follow-up visit where we're going to assess the GAD again several days later. In the pretend trial, there's 3 days of administering nachos every day. During that time period, when people are eating their nachos, they may experience adverse events. So we want to also have a case report form, which will allow people to enter as many adverse events as they experience. So this is a case where you can use the same form over and over and over again as many times as you need. So that's the general idea of what we're going to build out. So to do that, if you were able to create, and after the data is collected, I want to show you how you can summarize it both within REDCap and export it out and use either SAS. Actually, I didn't prepare SAS. How you can export it out and summarize the data using R, using what I hope is a pretty convenient package. So if you were able to create a project in advance, an empty project in advance, go ahead and go there. So this is the placeholder project that I made, I don't know, a couple days ago. So the placeholder project, it starts out with the name I gave it. Let's modify it and give it a real name. So to modify it, I'm on the project setup tab, and I'm going to do modify. I'm just going to call it live sex, drugs, and REDCap. It's just aesthetics. You don't have to do that. For this project, I'm going to have an opening survey where I can ask the patient what medications they're taking, their name, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do that. So I'll enable that this project will use surveys. This is also going to be a longitudinal project because I'm going to assess people at baseline and then a week later, a few days later. So I'll enable that as well. So clicking those buttons is actually adding functionality into the project. If you, just for aesthetics, I like this. I like the feeling of doing something, and so I'll mark the button to say I'm done. So this is just pure aesthetics, so it looks good. So at this point, REDCap knows we got a project, it's longitudinal, it will have surveys, but it doesn't have anything in it. I want to go through and I want to add in the events. So I want to add in a baseline assessment, a follow-up assessment, and the adverse event assessment. I guess you could call it a visit event. So I'm going to define my events by going down here and click on define my events. As I mentioned in the project in the video, it starts out with a single arm clinical trial. If you'd like to have a 2-arm trial, so say if we're going to use Nachos administered on some schedule for some people, and we're going to do an actual second drug and have a different time schedule, you can add in a second arm. But for now, we'll just stick with a single one. And let's call this thing baseline. And save it. And I'm going to add a new event. Whoops. I'm going to make a follow-up. So this would be like the end of study. And I'm going to add in another event, which is I'm going to call which I'm going to call adverse event. So far, so good. So we have 3 different events scheduled. There's no questionnaires or anything associated with them, but I now have 3 slots that I can put questionnaires into, on, whatever the right word is. And I'm going to cheat and look at my notes. Okay, so let's go to the baseline. Let's set up the eligibility questionnaire, which will obviously be given at baseline. So here, I'm going to create a new instrument, and to do that, I say instrument, you can think of it as being a questionnaire or case report form. I'm going to click the designer, and I start out with my first instrument. I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call this thing eligibility. If my keyboard works, I'm going to call this eligibility. What could possibly go wrong live coding? Yay, eligibility, and save it. So, and now I'd like to get in and add some questions to the eligibility. So when you start, the first instrument in your REDCap project will always have this thing called record ID. Leave it alone. It's just there to let REDCap keep track of your records. So it's just going to be a sequence 1, 2, 3, 4 out through the number of subjects you have. So let's add in a couple of fields. I'm going to start out by adding in name just to make a point. Oops, joy. Okay, add a field. It's going to be a text box for first name. The variable name I'm going to call is name _ first. Why am I doing that as opposed to first name? It's a convention within the R world where if you have a series of related variables, have them always start with the same name. It just makes it easier when you're like sorting alphabetically. You'll end up with similar things. It's kind of, for those of you who do SAS, it's like you always want to have if you have a series of related variables in SAS, you always want to have the same prefix and then flip through like number 1, number 2, number 3, because it makes array processing easier. Okay, but that is what it is. The point for doing this is please remember to mark every identifier as an identifier. So names, addresses, social security number, phone numbers, you know, all that. Also, please do remember my comment from the talk, from the recording, that dates are just as sensitive as social security numbers. So when you're not in REDCap, remember that if you hand somebody a data set which contains a date of birth, a date of service, a date of death, any date, it needs to be treated like you're handing them a social security number. It's just as sensitive as far as HIPAA, as far as the privacy laws are concerned. With REDCap, if you are processing dates, you do not need to mark them as identifiers, so long as the person exporting out of REDCap is correctly assigned a role like statistician. Huh? If I'm logged into a REDCap project with a role of statistician, when I export, the dates are automatically jittered. So I comment about that in the video as well, that each person will have a different number of days added on to their dates. So the first person may have 42 days added onto their date of birth, date of diagnosis, date of progression, date of death. Okay, so the data are no longer real dates, but because every date has the same amount added onto it, everything is consistent. So if you're interested in how long does a patient survive after getting a diagnosis, or how long does someone last between getting an HIV diagnosis before they get a diagnosis of AIDS, you can still do it because the number of days are consistent. They're just not real. So the first person may get 42 days added on. The next person may get 300 days added on. The idea is the dates have been jittered, so you're protected against concerns about identifying the patients. If you're asking yourself, has that held up in a court of law? As far as I know, no one has tested it yet. Okay, so proceed with caution. Still keep your data as secure as humanly possible. Okay, so at this point, I've set up our first name, and you would put in last name, et cetera, et cetera. Let me add in another field. I want to add in a couple things to determine eligibility. So let's do a yes, no field for allergic food allergies. Good typing, right? Do you have food allergies? Okay, and so this is going to be food allergies. I also mentioned in the video, if you have a yes/no question, precede the variable name with a verb. So rather than doing just food allergies, how about has food allergies? So you always want to record your variables as 1, 0. 1 is yes, 0 is no. If the variable begins with a verb and it's coded as 1, 0, you know what it means. So if you have a variable called has food allergies and it is given the value 1, you know the person has, somebody mumbled, food allergies, thank you. If it has a score of 0, you know the person does not have food allergies. So it saves me as a statistician the headache of having to look up what a variable means. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years. I never, ever want to see another data set which has a column called sex, which has 1 and 2 in it, because it means I have to go look it up. Call that is male, or if it's gender, you can put in the appropriate terms, so long as there's a verb. Okay, in allergies, I can do better than that.
What's the maximum characters for the variable name?
I don't think there is one, because I think behind the scenes, this is MySQL. Frankly, don't ever make a variable name longer than 32 characters. Number one, you'll hate yourself when you're trying to analyze it, and it could cause issues for SAS. So I just aim for short and reasonable. So I now have a has food allergies question. And then we add in another question, which is on medication. Or are you taking medication for GAD, generalized anxiety disorder? So again, add in a verb on _ medication. This is not an identifier, it's correctly marked. After this, I'd like to know, let's say we're going to restrict our study to people who are taking antidepressants for their GAD. And so antidepressants come in 2 flavors. There's a bunch of flavors, but there's a class called SSRIs, and there's another class which we'll just call antidepressants. There's other drugs which are used to treat, which can be used to treat GAD. But let me add in a checkbox, a set of checkboxes. for these. So here, this is going to be a choose all that apply question. Yeah. So I want to have multiple answer checkboxes. What medications are you taking? And the choices are going to include SSRI, antidepressants. They're going to have other antidepressant. Yeah. We're going to have antihistamines, beta blockers, and also other.
We're going to pretend benzos don't exist. I like that.
We're going to pretend that benzos don't exist.
Okay, cool.
And we're going to pretend that I know how to spell. So this is going to be called, so when you do that, it assigns secret code numbers to the values. Pretend I know how to spell and type. Whoa. So this is going to be called drugs.
Great.
And ma'am?
Can you scoot your
Thing over?
just a tiny bit? I can't
Yep.
quite see the very left side. I feel like, no, to the right.
Yep, I'm
Still
with you.
see.
Yep. Hold on. Please.
I think all you have to do is drag, add a new field to the left, and it'll fix itself.
Thank you. You're so hired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we have secret code numbers corresponding to the values and my excellent typing. Close enough. Okay. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to show you how to do a calculation to determine eligibility. So the calculation to determine eligibility is going to be the person can have no food allergies. They have to report they are taking medication and either of the antidepressants. Got it? So our rule is going to include both and also or. So this is one of the most common gotchas for people who are starting out with REDCap. If you mix, just like in math, if you mix and or, you must have parentheses. Just do it. Even if you know you've got it right, you don't. So, okay. So let's add in another field, which is going to be called eligible. Oops. Oh boy. And this is going to be a calculated field. Eligible. So this is, in theory, it will display as eligible, but I do not want to let the respondents see if they are eligible or not. So this would be like if you're doing any kind of psych assessment and you're scoring someone for depression, anxiety, whatever, you want REDCap to do the math for you, but you don't necessarily want your respondent to know that they have a quote unquote high score. So what you can do is you can add in an action tag to hide this field from people who are viewing it in survey mode. So if you log in, you'll still see the question, or you'll still see the variable and the response, but the people who are viewing it as a survey will not. So to get at that, you can do an action tag and say hidden survey and just click on add. And you can see down here, it adds on the action tag. There's many of these. Definitely scroll through the list and you'll see some useful things. So the respondent won't see this. The calculation, and let's call this is eligible. I think that's even spelled right. I often get questions about the use of underscore. So with my programming background, I learned that variable names should be written in camel case. So that is start out lowercase, at the first letter of every word, capitalize it. Okay. Unfortunately, REDCap will always lowercase every single letter. And so the capital case or the camel case, like bumps in a camel, gets hidden. So because of that, I will use underscores in my variable names that are coming from REDCap. So the calculation is going to be to do calculations, as I mentioned in the video, you can say if, and then open and close parentheses. I suggest you do what I'm doing here and use multiple lines. In REDCap 11, which there was an internal, actually this might be in the latest version of 10, which is not at yet. Coming soon, either in 11 or in the next release, this calculated field box is way better. So it's bigger, it has color, it will show you when your parentheses match. So people realize this needs some love. The calculation that I'd like to do is I want to see whether or not someone has marked, I'm going to save this because I can't remember what I called my variables. So please let me save it. Okay. It's unhappy with me. So for now, I'm going to do if, and I'm going to put in a rule just so it doesn't choke. I'm going to say if 1 equals 1, okay, if 1 equals 1, true, I'm going to return the value 1. Otherwise, I'm going to return the value 0. So I'm just putting in like a temporary thing so that I can click save on this. And why is it still marked as an error? That's different. What did I doing wrong here?
Is if capitalized or lowercase?
Yeah, at the moment it's capitalized, but I didn't think that mattered. Huh. Whoever said that, Jasper, you're also hired. Thank you, sir. Okay, so my rule has to be if has food allergies equals no, and because I'm not going to be able to type this correctly, I'm going to steal it. So I just double clicked it to copied it. So I'm going to say eligible is if food allergies equals 0. Okay, that's not entirely right. I need to tell it that this is a variable name. So has food allergies. So if has food allergies equals 0, and did I call it on medication? I should have stuck to my notes. No, has GAD. Okay. Sorry, guys. Save this. Okay, so and on medication, this really should have been has GAD because you only want people who have the disease to be in your clinical trial, but all right. This and wow. On medication equals yes. Okay, so we have people without food allergies who are on medication. Then the or part, so those two things have to both be true. And some other, and then additional parentheses, some other condition has to be true. In particular, the person either has to be taking SSRIs or other antidepressants. Those are coded, so the variable started out with drugs, and the options that were okay for being in the study were drug number 1. Oops, I'm doing this wrong. Drug number 1. Drug number 1 or drug number 2. Okay, and again, I need to refer to the variables themselves. So I'm going to put these inside of square brackets. How am I doing? So I've combined both ands and ors. So the ors I've put inside of a second set of parentheses to make sure that those two things are evaluated as a unit. If you forget the parentheses, the rule will say they cannot have food allergies. They must be on medication and taking SSRIs. That's one thing. Or if they're taking antidepressants. Got it? So if you don't have the parentheses, that final or will cause this to be a standalone check. So it has to be this and this and this, or this other thing. So don't forget the extra parentheses. I hope if I do it like this, there's enough room that you can see it.
Ray, why don't you have to put equal to 1 for those two?
Sorry.
You do have to. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Technically, you might be able to get away without it.
It
But-
said valid.
Yeah, I think you can get away with it because it will evaluate that like it.
Assumes, maybe it assumes you mean that that's equal to 1.
Yep, because 1 is always true, but don't go there. Just do it right. So the key point that I want you to take home that I didn't have in the video was, please remember to use parentheses if you're mixing ands and ors. So we now have our eligibility criteria. And so let me add that into the project. Let me assign this to the screening visit. So I'm going to go back to the project setup. And I need to assign this questionnaire to that visit. So I can designate instruments for my events for here in this middle section. And it's already done it by default. So it is put it as part of the baseline visit. Okay, now something new. So I mentioned that I want to use the GAD-7 and I want to use the Nacho Craving Index as part of this. I do not want to have to code the GAD-7 myself. If you, please be aware, there is a library of instruments available. I mentioned that in the video, but I didn't show it. So if I go here to the designer, I can say, I want to add in another instrument and I want to import from the International REDCap library. So you can do that by clicking up here and clicking import. And it takes you through, you can say we're now looking at Vanderbilt and we can choose what instruments we want to add. I'll warn you now that the key search is not great. So I'm actually on the REDCap library committee and we're working on getting tags added in here. So say you want every single instrument in the library which deals with depression, soon you'll be able to search for the tag of depression or anxiety or whatever. But if you know the exact name, you can usually find it. For now, let's add in the Nacho Craving Index. So here it is. I'm going to import. So I click on that. I'm going to add it into my project. Normally, so here you're saying I'm not going to modify this and sell it. Do read this. Do read this. Technically, you're not allowed to modify the instruments because we're trying to protect the copyright. And I'm going to call this its true name, the NCI. It was a very long day of me doing paperwork for the National Cancer Institute, and I decided I couldn't take it anymore. And so I developed the Nacho Craving Index a few years ago. So now I have the 2 instruments that are available for the project. Let me add in a third one. So let me add in the GAD-7. I can't remember. You can see I did this. I think this does not find it. Yeah, okay. So I search for GAD, and you'll notice it's found more than 27 pages of responses. Not so helpful. So if I search for generalized anxiety, here it is. So there's the GAD-7. Notice that the library has both the pure questions and also the scored version. So just for giggles, let's import the GAD-7 scored. There are many instruments in the library in English and Spanish. We're working on getting some in Creole added in as well. Obviously, that's a hard one, but I'm working on it. Okay, so now we have 3 instruments potentially in play. Let me assign those to the project. So go back here, or assign those to events. And to do that, I'm going to designate my instruments. So the first one was automatically tagged. We're going to have the NCI given at baseline. We're going to have the GAD7 given at baseline and also at follow-up. Save this. I want to add in one more instrument, and this one is going to be the adverse event form. Oops, go back to the designer.
So let me ask you while you're doing this, Ray, what's the difference between doing it this way as an event or doing it as a repeated form?
Gotcha. So right now I've chosen, I've assigned the GAD to 2 different events, okay? I did it this way because I know there will be 2 and only 2 events, okay? What I'm about to show you is if you don't know how many times something is going to happen, like adverse events, you can set it up so that form can be repeated as many times as needed. Okay, so when in doubt, specify the time points and add the instruments in for the time points. But if you know it's something that will be have an unknown number of repeats, so in real life, I've done this for adverse events, or when trying to build out a family structure, I do not want to have plan in advance for everybody to have 1 brother and 1 sister. I can have a repeated form, which is entered for every single sibling, and I end up with as many as needed. Okay, let me add in 1 more instrument, and I'm going to just put it down here for giggles, and this is going to be called AE. AE for adverse event. For the adverse events, I'm going to say that there's only 3 kinds of adverse events that anybody in the study can have. So I'm going to do radio buttons. Actually, let me start out by getting, I'll do it slightly differently. Let me start out by doing what day. So this is going to be when, just to make this kind of realistic. You get the idea. All right, just do it like that. And let me add in the information on what happened. And so the 2 adverse events we're going to experience is upset stomach and goodness, stomach or stain. What happens when you eat a lot of nachos? You get an upset stomach or you stain your clothing. And then of course there's the catch-all other. So here, this is going to be what happened. And let me add in the follow-up, what other thing happened? So I want to have a follow-up question, obviously. If somebody reports some other adverse event happened, what other happened? Or what happened other? And this is again going to be a text box. I'd like to have this other question appear immediately after someone selects other up above. So this question is only relevant when this is other. So let me put in the branching logic so that it will know when to show this. I can click on this and say, show this when what happened is equal to other. Save that. So right now that question will appear if and only if what happened is set equal to 3. What I'd like to do though is have this fill in the blank appear right after this. So what I'm going to do is grab the name and use one of the new features in REDCap 10. So here, by doing this, I'm using squiggly braces, squiggly brackets, which are over by the return key on the keyboard. I'm saying, show the follow-up question there. So you'll notice here that this now indicates that this question is now embedded elsewhere on the page. So it's now embedded here. How am I doing? Questions, comments, complaints? So I've now set up an adverse event form, but what I want to do.
I have a quick question. Do you have to hide that item when you embed it somewhere else, or do you leave it?
Leave it as is. It will automatically be hidden. So it will behave just like, because this one had branching logic, it will behave just like normal. It will appear or hide itself depending on the previous question, depending on the response to the previous question. But that's it. You don't have to do anything to have it behave properly with a field embedding.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Cool. So let me go back to the project setup. I want to assign that the AE form to the adverse event visit. Kind of a weird idea. So there we go. So I now have the AE questionnaire will be applicable on the adverse event visit. Okay. How do I tell it that this can happen over and over? That visit can happen endlessly. If I go back to the project setup, you can come here and choose enable repeating instruments or events. When you click that, you can say either the entire visit or a questionnaire on a visit can repeat over and over again. Here, it doesn't matter because the event only has one form, but you can specify it like this. Makes some sense? So I now have a form that has been marked as it can happen over and over and over again. So I'll save that. How does this work in practice? So I've now set up the study where I have repeated visits and the unknown or infinite number of adverse events. I can enter a data on a person. So enter records. I'm going to add in a new person. And here, fill out the eligibility. Yes, nope, no. They're taking medications. They're on SSRIs. Notice the eligibility completes itself. I've just created an eligible person who I'm going to call Ray. Oop. It's red. Why is it red? Because here I marked it as incomplete. This is just purely aesthetic. I'm going to indicate that I'm done with this record. It's now a green circle. I can do the Nacho Craving Index. Yes, I've eaten. Have I ever used nachos to treat a medical condition other than hunger? I'm going to go with no. When I last ate nachos in the last year. Have you traveled? Yes. I have traveled 2,600 miles. I have traveled back to Los Angeles for the sole purpose of eating nachos. I am currently craving nachos like all of you are. I'm really sorry. It's pretty bad. So this. There actually is a method to my madness here. So this person is craving a bunch of ingredients. You can put in information on how much you love these. And mark this as complete. Save and exit form. I can fill out the GAD. In theory, if I had an extra hour, I would fill in all of this. I'm going to add in an adverse event. So on Monday, I had an upset stomach. Complete. Save and exit form. On Tuesday, so I want to now add another one, add in another adverse event. Click on this. On Tuesday, I ate too many nachos. I got an upset stomach and an upset stomach. On Tuesday, I also stained my shirt. It was a bad day. So I hope you got the idea. You can put in strain, that's good. I strained my shirt from nachos, also pretty good. So that's the idea. You can add in repeated events. I want to talk a little bit about exporting data out of REDCap to do analyses. So as I mentioned in the video, you can go here to the data export and report. You can view the data that we just entered, and you can export it. I'm going to hop to a project which has the practice project, which had a little bit more data in it, just so we can have a more interesting export. So I'm going to go to my projects. So here, all I did is I added in a few more events. And now I'm going to go to data exports. So you can go here and you can point and click and do the export. Export data. I'm going to export into R. This will behave very, very similarly for the other platforms. I currently have no restrictions on my role. I will jitter the dates just to make the point that this will shift the dates to protect the anonymity of my fake patients. Got the idea, and I can export it. So I exported this data yesterday, and or the day before, 1 second. And in R, it exports out 2 files. It export R like SAS or Stata or any other. It exports out 2 files. One of them is chock full of code, which makes you go, oh no. And the other one is full of comma separated values. So you can do the manual export and then go into your favorite analysis package and analyze it. I want to show you a slight variation, which is to instead have another programming language directly call REDCap and say, pull in the up to the second data. I'm going to do this in R. I can also show you how to do this in SAS. I can send you a code snippet which does it in SAS. Here's the scoop. In REDCap, back in REDCap, I had previously requested API permissions. So down here, so I asked the REDCap administrator to give me API access. So down here, I have this new section called API, and you can say generate a key. Here is my key. So this is the equivalent of typing your password. Yes, I will be changing this the moment I finish this talk. So this is the password. This is the key for this project. In R, I can take a code snippet, which again, I'll share this with you like this. This says, hey, R, make a connection to the local version of REDCap with this token. So this is making a connection. This says, hey, R, ask REDCap for the data. I just saved myself all of those clicks in doing the export. Okay.
And then just to say, it made it into that file, REDCap Nacho anxiety.
Correct.
The data that you got from there with that extra line gets put into a data file called REDCap Nacho anxiety. Yeah.
So here it is. So this is what, when I put in some fake people the other day, you can see here, here's the screening, here's the baseline. This first person had 3 adverse events. So this code does all of that for you. In real life, never, ever, ever share your API token. It's the same thing as giving away your password. Here, then I'd like to use the package I wrote called Tidy REDCap, which helps process the data. Notice when I exported this, information on the nachos are not being asked over and over and over again. So like on this visit, I have nacho data, but like on all the adverse event visits, I didn't gather nacho craving information. So the table is full of holes. It's like Swiss cheese. So I have this package called Tidy REDCap, and what it will do is you can say, go into that table, which is full of holes, start someplace, end someplace. So I'm going to start at the first nacho question. first question on the Nacho Craving Index is called nachos. The last question is called beat. This says, go into that table, look at those variables, and only keep the records where there's data. So in other words, on all of the visits where I gathered Nacho Craving information, get those and put those into a new data set. So here, this is going to make a new data set called the NCI, which has the Nacho Craving information, which I just exported. So I've reduced this down to only 2 records instead of the 10 or 12 that were there before. There's another.
And it drops the columns, right? It drops every column that you don't have in that let's say it drops the columns for the baseline, the follow-up.
Correct. It's saying go in to this slice of the data, pull those out, find the records which have data. So if anybody answered anything in there, it would have data. Here, there's a function for choose all. So this says go in and look at all of the. So you'll recall I asked, are you craving chips, orange cheese, white cheese, beans? This goes through and it says get all of those ingredients questions. If you're craving them, add them to a total. And so here you see it gives you the sum total of what are craved. There's another function in Tidy REDCap, which is make choose one table, which will go through. You can have it appear a little bit better, but it will give you the summary information for people's responses to that question. The last thing I want to point out is it's very useful to know in a choose all that apply question, which things are co-occurring. So are people consistently craving meat and beans or chips and whatever? So there's a function called make binary word. The way it works is it says, assign each option of your choose all that apply a secret code letter or secret code number. So in this case, chips are being abbreviated C, yellow cheese is being abbreviated with Y, orange cheese with O, et cetera, et cetera. Every option is given a secret code letter. And then there's a function called make binary word, which will go through, oops, I forgot to run one line of code. There is a function which will go through and build all of the combinations. So far, so good. So this is showing you that the first person was craving every single ingredient. The second person was not craving orange cheese. You can then do a frequency count on that new variable and get what all of the combinations are. So that's some of the magic that's built into Tidy REDCap. We have new functions which are coming through soon, which will do things like if you have 10 questions or 10 instruments, it will generate 10 subtables like this did for the Nacho table, for the Nacho Craving Index. So you'd automatically get your, sorry?
We can't see that table.
Which one?
The table with the, how many people said 2 things or 3 things?
So right here, it's currently just showing the actual patterns. You would feed this into another function to do a frequency table on that.
But you're not showing the table. Oh, okay. No, I thought it was underneath.
No, it's just not. It's dropped off the thing. If you'd like to learn more about this, watch the video and or just Google Tidy REDCap, and you can get through. And there's many examples. There's many examples shown. So
Great.
that's the guts of what I wanted to show you. So here you can go into the articles and it will show you how to use all of those functions. So that's the guts of the stuff that I wanted to show today. If you could please fill out the evaluation and let me know. This is all brand new. I've never taught this before. This has never been shown to anybody else before. So any feedback you can give me on the pre-recorded videos as well as this would be wildly helpful.